Okay, class, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about something very important, that is Excel functions. Functions along with charting are probably the two most important features in Excel and what go a long way towards making it such a powerful program. It's really important that you get comfortable with the functions, and as you do, you'll get more confidence and be able to use more and more complex functions. Excel has over 400 functions. You'll probably only use 15 or 20, maybe 25 of them, but there is a function for everybody. Now we'll start off talking about functions in general, and then we'll get into some specific functions that you should get comfortable with. Just to refresh and differentiate between a formula and a function. A formula is something that you create to do whatever work you need to get done. A formula can have a function in it, but it does not have to have a function. It's optional depending on what your needs are. A function, however, cannot have a formula in it. It is closed. It is part of Excel. It is something built into Excel to help you accomplish some work depending on whatever you need. Now, both formulas and functions get invoked when you build them the same way, starting off with an equal sign, but from there, they're vastly different. There's three main ways to get a function into Excel. The easiest way would be if you know the name of the function. If you know the name of the function, you can just start typing the equal sign and the first couple letters of the function name, and then you'll get a list of all the functions that begin with the same letter. When you find the one you want on the list, you just double click it and it'll help you with the function builder to show you how to build the function by telling you what criteria needs to go in the function. So an example of that, let's look at these numbers right here. 5 numbers. Let's say we want to get the average of these numbers. Now, the average function is one of the ones that's built in up here on the Home tab under the Auto Sum feature. There it is right there. And it also can be found over here on the Formula tab under Auto Sum and Average. But we're going to invoke it by typing in an equal sign and typing the first couple letters of a name. So we'll type an equal sign here. AVE, that's enough to bring it up. There it is, the second one right there. So you'll double click it, and now Excel will help you build your function. So it's put the left parentheses in, and you need to give it the range of cells that you want to have averaged out, and then it needs to be closed with a right parentheses over here. But actually, on a simple function like this, when you press the enter sign, the enter key, I should say, at the end, it'll put the right parentheses in for you. So it's looking for the range of numbers right here. So if you click right here, the easiest way is to just drag down to include all the numbers that you want. Excel builds a range from D9 to D13. All you need to do now is press the enter key. It'll put the right parentheses in to close it off, and it'll build and complete the function. So there's the average of those numbers, 234. So that is a easy way to build a function by knowing the name of it. If you use these often enough, you will learn the names of the ones that become the most meaningful to you. Another way to invoke a function would be to know what the function does, or you're not really sure what the name of it is, or you want to learn a little bit more about it. So let's take a look over here. This technique is used if you don't quite know the name of the function, or you need additional assistance. So let's say we have the number 955 here. Right below, we want to take the square root of that number. Don't forget, a square root is a number that when you multiply it by itself, it gives you the desired number. So the square root here would be a number that when you multiply it by itself would give you 955. Now, in this situation, you can't quite remember the name of the square root function in Excel. So what you've got to do is you've got to go up here to right here, the Insert Function button, or on the Formula tab, Insert Function is the same. If you're on the Home tab, you need to click over to Formula. There it is there, but it's always right here too, next to the formula bar. So if you click on this, now here's where you can type in a little about what you know about the function. So you know that it wants to, you want to get the square root. So if you type in square root without knowing the name of it, and you choose the category of all functions, and you type go, there it is right there. It's the SQRT, the square root function. So you would double click on it, and now it needs the number that you want to get the square root of. It's just looking for one number. So you'd come up here, you click in there. This is cell G9, so it populates it into the box there. All you need to do is click OK, and it comes back with the square root of 955, which is 30.90307. Okay, now you could do the same thing over here with the average by clicking on the insert function, and you could type in AVERAGE, type go. There's the average function, so you click on it. It's smart enough to know that it looks to see what numbers adjacent to this cell might need to be averaged. So it does come up with D9 through D13. You don't have to do anything here. It's already found the numbers that you want to average, so all you have to do is click OK, and once again, there it is. So that's two ways to get functions. Probably the least intuitive, but the most comprehensive way would be to go back on the Formulas tab here, and you can find the recently used functions, but here is a breakdown of all the functions by category. So financial functions, if you're a financial person, you'll find all the functions that you want to use in here. Logical functions, where we're employing some logic to get the desired result, are built in here. We'll show you an example of this in a few minutes. There's text-based functions. These just work on text and not numbers, extracting values from text, putting text strings together, and all sorts of text-based capabilities. Date and time functions. Don't forget that when you put a date into Excel, it's actually a number, and because it gets converted to a number, you can do arithmetic on whatever dates you have. You can subtract one date from the other to see how many days are in between, etc. There's lookup and reference function. This is probably a little bit not used that much, but it's there for somebody to use. Math and trig functions. If you're in the math world, in the math realm, you'll find everything you need right in here for all different levels of math. And then finally, there's more functions which are broken down into subcategories. Statistical engineering, cube, information, compatibility, and web-based. Statistical, this is where you find the average function in case you didn't know, and anything else that deals with statistical analysis. Okay, so that is a summary of the three ways that you would get functions put in, either finding it in the function library category here, knowing the name of it and typing the first couple letters after the equal sign, or clicking on the insert function button, typing in the name of it or what you're trying to accomplish, and hopefully it can find the specific name of the function for you. So next we'll talk about some specific basic functions that you should know for Excel. Okay, now we're on the some specific basic functions tab, and before we build this out a little bit, I wanted to talk briefly about two of the more useful functions for me. Those are the built-in random number generator functions in Excel. Sometime if I need some sample data, if it's just a couple numbers, I can type them in, but if it's more than that, I would rather let Excel do the heavy lifting for me by using the random number generators in Excel. There's two functions. One is called rand, which generates a random number between 0 and 1, under 1, and greater than 0. So it's going to be a decimal value. The other one is rand between, which generates a random integer or whole number between any two numbers that you specify. So say if you wanted random numbers between 1 and 500, you would use the rand between function, and you would tell it 1, 500, and you'll get a random number between those two numbers. Let me just show you how this works over here. Say I want to get some random numbers between 1 and 100 that have 2 decimal places. So this will be how we would do that. The first thing you want to do is build your first number. So let's do it in this cell right here, B9. I know I want to use the rand function, so I'll type equal RAN, and then there it is, rand. Returns a random number greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1. So it's going to be a decimal number. So this function has no parameters. It just requires left and right parentheses, which will get built in when you double click on it there. So double click, press the enter key, and we see it generated a random number. Now, if you want to get it to be a random number between 1 and 100, you need to multiply this random number up here by 100. So let's do that. Let's put a multiplication sign in, and then put 100 and press enter, or click on the checkbox here. And now you can see it took that random number and it multiplied it by 100. So we got 69.4902. Now, if we want to trim this down to only 2 decimal places, we have to use another function. We are going to show you an example of nesting functions here. There's a function called the round function, which can round a number down to a desired number of decimal places. In this case, we decided we want numbers with 2 decimal places. So the round function looks for the number you want to round, a comma, and then the number of decimal places you want to round it down to. So the round function needs to go right before the rand function. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to type ROU, and then there it is there. So I'll double click. It puts the left parentheses in. Here's the number that it's going to round. And then we've got to click after the 100, put a comma, and tell it that we want to round to 2 places, and put the right parentheses in, and press enter. Now you can see it's created a random number between 0 and 100, down to 2 decimal places. Now I can use the autofill handle to drag down to create a bunch of random numbers between 1 and 100 with 2 decimal places. Now, one thing you need to know when you use the Excel random number generator is that every time you do another calculation or another function in Excel, it's going to change these numbers. If the values of the numbers need to remain consistent, then you need to copy them and paste them into a different cell, and those will become hard-coded values. You need to do a paste values type of paste, and then you'll lock those in. So that's what we're going to do here now. I'm going to highlight all these numbers. When I do the paste values, it's going to change these numbers one more time. In this case, it doesn't really matter what the numbers are, but I don't want them to keep changing. So I'm going to highlight all of them. I'm going to right click. I'm going to say copy. I'm going to come to this next cell here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to do paste values. So it pasted a bunch of values in. Of course, it changed the originals like I said it would. But now if you click out of here, and you click back in the originals, you see that each number is still using the random number generator and the formula that we built. If you click over here, you can see once we pasted the values in, it's not going to do that anymore. So these will be locked in values. So now we can highlight these numbers here. We don't need them anymore, and just delete them out of there. So these would be the numbers that we would work with. So that's an example of using the rand function. The other one is the rand between function, and I'll show you how to use that. Equal RAND, so there it is there, rand between. It returns a random number between whatever 2 random numbers you specify. So if I double click on this, it's looking for the first number in the range and the last number. So if you want random numbers, say between 250 and 1250, this is how you would do it. Okay, so 572, now you can use the autofill handle to drag these down. These are going to keep changing every time you do another function or calculation. If you don't want to do that, you've got to copy them to the clipboard by selecting on them, copying them, coming over here to a new cell, right-clicking, do a paste values, paste values, paste them in there. Now you can. Okay, we're going to start showing you some function examples. We already talked about random numbers, so we don't have to cover that. Let's go over here to column E, where we'll talk about the min, the max, and the sum function. We'll start off with the sum function here. The sum function is probably the most popular, heavily used function in Excel, and it's very easy to use. It's so popular that they installed it up here on the auto sum drop down right there, and it's also over here under formulas, under auto sum, right there. So if you want to use it in that particular fashion, which is the easiest way actually, you just need to put your cursor in an empty cell adjacent to a column of numbers or to the right of a row of numbers. The function will look up or look to the left to see where the cells with numbers are. It'll build a range and it'll automatically add them up for you. So just to show you, we've got this cell here, the active cell. Will come up here, click on sum. You can see it's already found the range E9 through E36. All you need to do is press the enter key, and presto, it adds up all these numbers here. But we want to show you how to do it if you have to use the equal sign, if you know the name of the function. So let's type equal, and then we know that the function is a sum function. Once you find the one that you want, verify over here that this is what you want to do. You'll simply double click on it. It'll start to build the function for you, putting the left parentheses in. It's looking for the range of numbers. So all you need to do is click on the first cell and drag down to the last cell and press the enter key, and just like that, it adds up the numbers for you. It's very easy to use. Okay, min and max. Min finds the smallest number in a range, max finds the biggest. So let's try min. So equal min, a double click, select the range, press enter, and just like that, it comes back with 287, which wherever it is here should be the smallest number in this whole column of numbers. There it is right there. Okay, max works the same way. So equal max, double click to activate it and build the function. Come down here, highlight the range, press enter, and there you have it. 1225 is the maximum number, and there it is right there. Very easy to use. Okay, let's move over here to the next column. Using the same numbers, we'll use the count function, and the count function will count all cells in a range that have numbers in them. So as you can see here, every cell in our range has numbers in them. So the count function will tell you how many cells in this range we have with numbers in them. So let's put it underneath. So equal COU. That's enough to find it here. First one that shows up, counts the number of cells in a range that contain numbers. So double click it, drag down to specify the range, press the enter key, and it comes back with 28, which is precisely how many cells there are in this range that have numbers in them. Now, let's remove this function here, and let's go in and change a couple of these cells here. We'll change this one to hello. We'll come down here and we'll blank this one out, and we'll come down here and we'll type goodbye. So even though we have information in these two here, it's not numeric information. It should not be counted. This one here is empty, and that shouldn't be counted either. So let's try the count function now. So equal count, drag through the whole range, and now, whereas before it was 28, whoops, what did we do here? Equal count. Okay, now it returns 25, which is correct because we have 3 cells that are not counted. So 28 minus 3 gives you 25. So that's what the count function does. Let's come over here and look at the COUNTA function. The COUNTA function returns all the cells that are not empty. So let's make a few of these cells empty to test this out. So we'll get rid of these cells here, and we'll get rid of this one here. So now we've got several empty cells in the range. Let's use the COUNTA function to find out how many cells are not empty. COUNTA counts the number of cells in the range that are not empty. So double click here, bring the range down, press enter, and now we can see that of the 28 cells that we have in this range, 18 of them are not empty, and of course that leaves 10 that are empty. So COUNTA, very useful for finding cells that are not empty in a range. Moving over here, we've got two more we're going to cover. The COUNTIF function will count the number of cells that meet a certain criteria that you set when you build the function. So let's take a look at that. Let's say in this whole column of numbers here, we want to know how many numbers are greater than or equal to 595. And we do have one cell right here that is equal to 595, so that one should just make the cut. So we want to find the count of all the cells that are greater than or equal to 595. So equal, COUNT, there's COUNTIF right there. So what you got to do is pick the range, and then it wants to know after the range you have to put a comma in, as you can see here, and then it wants to know what the criteria is. Well, we decided that the criteria will be all cells greater than or equal to 595, and this type of criteria, the criteria must be enclosed in double quotes. So let's put a double quote, a greater than sign, an equal than sign, and 595. Close off with a double quote, and then a right parentheses to close off the whole function, and it returns 20. So there's 20 of these 28 cells are 595 or bigger. Now let's go in and change this function here and say we want to find all the ones that are greater than 595. So since one of them is equal to 595, this should drop it down by 1. So now if we press the enter key, that's exactly what it does. This one right here does not get counted because we said the criteria is greater than 595. Equal to 595 will not count. Okay, the other one we want to check over here, let me get rid of this, is the COUNTBLANK function that does exactly what it sounds. So if we have 2 blanks here, 3 here, 1 here, 1 here, and 2 here, now if we want to count how many blanks we have, use the COUNTBLANK. So COUNTBLANK is to specify the range, press the enter key, and it'll tell you that we have 9 cells in this range that are blank cells. Very handy, very useful. Now, the COUNTIF function that we just did over here also can work on non-numeric information. It can work on information that is alphanumeric or just words. So if you look in this column right here, I listed a bunch of different berries: blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, cherry berries, huckleberries, and I think we have a strawberry here, and we have a dingleberry. Okay, but say we wanted to find out what the count is of raspberry. How many of these cells have raspberry in there? So that's where you can use COUNTIF also. So equal, COUNT, here's COUNTIF, specify the range, bring it down, comma, put the criteria. The criteria is double quote, raspberry, double quote, close parentheses, and there we get a 5. So you can see that here's one raspberry here. Here's another one here. That's 2, 3, 4. I think we missed one somewhere. Oh, right there. There's 5 raspberries. So that's how you use COUNTIF to count information that's not numeric. It works just like the numeric as long as you specify it properly in the criteria and closing it in double quotes. Now let's come over here to the last column. We have SUMIF and SUMIFS. SUMIF will add up all the cells that meet certain criteria. It's kind of like COUNTIF, but COUNTIF counts how many cells meet certain criteria. SUMIF will add up the numeric cells that meet certain criteria. So let's say we want to add up down here all the cells that are larger than 600. So we say equal SUM, SUMIF is the second choice. Double click it. So it wants the range like that. And you got to put a comma. And then the criteria will be double quote greater than 600. Close the quote. Close the function. Press enter. So what we get here is 16,725, which should be the total of all the cells in this range here that are greater than 600. And then the last thing we can do here, we can use SUMIFS. So imagine if we wanted to get totals over here of all the cells over here that had raspberry. So we wanted to add up this 453 to the 478 to the 642 to the 618 and this one here also. So we want to find all the cells in this column here that have the word raspberry and add up the numbers in the column next to it here on the same row that have raspberry over here in yellow. So that's a good classic example of SUMIFS. So equal SUMIF, there it is there. So as the cell specified by a given set of conditions or criteria. So we'll double click it. So the first thing it wants is the sum range. So that's where the numbers are. So we have to specify where the numbers are. There's the range, and we put a comma in, and it wants to know where the range is that we're going to compare, or the criteria range, which is this range right over here. And then we have to put a comma, and we have to put the criteria. Well, the criteria is going to be double quote RASPBERRY, double quote, right parentheses, and let's see what we got. Okay, so those 5 occurrences of raspberry over here added up to be 3,063 from the values in this column over here. So there's some good useful functions, and we'll be back in a few minutes to try some other functions here to get you guys on the way. Then I'm going to have a function drill exercise for you. Okay, we're going to start off showing you how to use some of the built-in text functions for Excel. Most of them are fairly straightforward. We'll start off with the left, right, and mid function. So the left function will take a string of text like astronomy, and it'll extract from that string of text, starting from the leftmost point, which would be the A here, for however many characters that you specify. So let's say we wanted to pull the first 4 characters from the word astronomy. So the left function would be used like this. Equal left, double click, and wants to know where the text is that we're pulling from. So there it is, astronomy, a comma, and how many characters do we want to extract starting from the leftmost position? Well, we said 4, so we type a comma and then a 4, and then press the enter key after the closing parentheses, and there is 4 characters. Let's go change that. I want to make it 5 characters instead of 4. All right, so you're pulling the first 5 characters, and you can use the autofill handle to drag down and pull the first 5 characters from these other disciplines of study. Now the right function works the same way as the left, except for instead of starting at the leftmost point in the word or the string of characters, it starts at the rightmost point. So it would start over here at the Y for astronomy, and it would pull however many characters you specify, moving to the left from the rightmost point. So let's say we wanted to pull the 5 rightmost characters from the word astronomy. We'd say equal right, double click, where's the text? It's right here, comma, and then we want to get 5 characters, right parentheses, and bingo. So that's the rightmost characters from astronomy. We use the autofill handle to drag down, and look how easy that is. The mid function pulls from the middle of a string. So it doesn't start at the left, doesn't start at the right, it starts somewhere in the middle. You need to tell it where do you start. So you need to tell it the text that you're pulling from, the starting point, and how many characters from that starting point. So let's say our starting point is going to be position 3 in the word astronomy, and we're going to pull 5 characters from position 3 using the mid function. So we would go equal mid, find the one we want, the only one here, double click, looking for the text. So it's right there in that cell, comma, starting in position 3, and we're grabbing 5 characters, right parentheses, and there we go. So we use the autofill handle to drag down. So that works pretty good. Okay, now let's try the concat function. So the concat function will join string values in cells together. If you don't specify any separators between them, you'll just get the values from one cell packed against the next cell, packed against the next cell. I'll show you what I mean. Equal concat. Okay, it wants to know, well, what do you want to concatenate? So you click here, you drag right across here, all 3 of those cells, press the enter key. So we get Herman A. Sherman, but we get no spacing at all. So with the concat function, you would have to indicate the spacing that you want to put in between each character. So let's redo this again and do it that way. So equal concat, double click. Instead of dragging or grabbing all of them, we'll grab the first one and then a comma to separate the next thing we want to put in, which is a comma and a space. So we have to close those in double quotes, double quote, comma, space, double quote. So that'll be the next thing after Herman, and then we're done with that piece of information. So okay, the last thing we're going to show you is a TEXTJOIN function, which works similar to the concat, only you specify when you build the formula what the separator will be between each cell. So in this case, a comma and a space would be a good separator for most of the way. It'll cause a problem over here, and I'll show you how you work around that. So let's try out the TEXTJOIN over here. So equal TEXT, there it is there, TEXTJOIN. First thing I want to know is what is the delimiter going to be. So it's going to be a double quote, a comma, a space, close it off, and a comma. Now the next thing I want to know is if we ignore empty cells or we include empty cells. So we are going to tell it true to ignore empty cells, and then we need to drag along and include all the cells that we want and close it off with a right parentheses. So this looks pretty good, except for there's one problem over here. You see after the state of Nevada and before the zip code there's a comma. Well, typically you don't have commas in there. So we want to try and find a better way to do this, and that way would be to do a TEXTJOIN on these 3 characters here only, and then use the result of that and feed it into the concat function, where we'll concat the TEXTJOIN and then 2 spaces and then the zip code. So let's clear this out and try to build that now. It's a lot to remember, so I wrote it down here. I'm going to edit my note. I'm going to copy the syntax of it. Control C. I'm going to come up here, right click, and I'm going to paste it. And actually it should be in this cell right here. Now you can see how it looks better. There's no comma after the state and before the zip code. And if we look at the function up here, well, it's easier to see this. Okay, I wanted to show you one more use of the concat function. So here's a good use of it. So say you've got a first name and a last name and a part of an email address and a domain name, and you wanted to concatenate all these into an email address. So here's how you do that. Equal concat. The first 2 can be together, so you can grab them all at once, and then a comma, and then we want to put an @ sign in there, so it's got to go within a double quote, and then a comma, and then we're going to pull in this right here, and then a comma, and then we want to put a period in there, so we'll put that in double quotes, a comma, and then the domain name right there, close it off with a right parentheses, and look what we've got. We just created a nice email address using the concat function, and there it is right up there in the formula bar. So hope that helps a little bit. Equal concat, L29 through M29, you pull these two in first, and then you put a comma, you put an ampersand, close it in double quotes, a comma, and then the Gmail, which is N29, and then of course a comma to separate that from the period you want to hard code in there in double quotes, a comma, and then the domain name, which is the .com, which comes from 029. So hope that is another good useful demonstration of how to use the CONCAT function. By the way, I'm going to share a worksheet with you where you'll get a chance to practice some or most of the things we talked about here. Have fun.